Thank you for joining OOSKAnews today, Alice Aureli. You're with UNESCO. Please take a moment to describe to our readers and listeners what precisely your role and your department does within the organisation.
Good morning, and thank you for calling us on this conversation. That I think it's worldwide, in particular in this moment that we are talking about climate change, and climate change definitely has a tremendous impact on the future water resources access of humanity in this planet. UNESCO, considering these topics, has established already in the 70s a full-fledged intergovernmental program for water resources management, governance, education, and water and culture. And I'm the chief of a section of UNESCO in this intergovernmental program that is looking at, in particular, the invisible resource, that is groundwater resources, it is the aquifer that are in the subsoil, and water for human settlement. So I have a large team here at the headquarters in Paris and in many UNESCO offices around the world, in particular with our mandate of support countries in developing phase.
And you identify already that while the world looks at Poland this week and climate adaptation measures to support water security, groundwater is a less visible water resource than the obvious lakes and streams.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much important that media start informing the people and the civil society, because groundwater is the most abundant source of fresh water on Earth. It's accounting for approximately 97% of non-frozen ice fresh water. It is an important natural resource that contributes to human development. You can imagine approximately 50% of the world's population drinks every day groundwater. It is really a critical source for sustaining rural population in Africa and many other regions, in particular in arid zones where there are no surface water, there is no rivers and lakes. And definitely, with respect to food production, groundwater is the real water, fresh water source that contributes to over 40% of the world's population of irrigated crops. So, I mean, this system down the soil, the aquifer that contain these water resources that is called groundwater, really are not only crucial for our life in the planet as human beings, but also for ecosystem, because many ecosystem really depends on the water under the soil. And some of these aquifers are very large and very deep and are shared by more countries. And these, of course, include actions on diplomacy, on cooperation, on governance, and laws that not always are really considered by many countries around the world. Related to climate change, I mean, aquifers can act as a buffer, as you say, for the adaptation measures, in order to limit the negative impact of the seasonal variability and climate change. And this is very much not known by, let's say, decision makers and politicians. Why? Because hydrogeology, the science that studies this groundwater system, is a very specialized science, and there is very little interdisciplinarity that would be very much needed. So education for water resource management should include not only hydrology and hydrogeology, but also legal issues, cultural issues, societal issues, because at the end, water is not only something that we drink. It's really something that is supporting human activities in all fields of activities of our economy and sustainable development.
The nature of its relative invisibility makes the legality complex, I'm sure, because throughout human civilization and settlement, we know where to put a border. It's beside the lake or it's beside the river. But the less obvious nature of groundwater must throw up many complexities.
Yes, it is, and we need really specialized studies, and also to create this scientific and technical capacity in the country is urgent and needed. I'm not talking about Europe, of course, but all the rest of the world. There are areas where this capacity is not yet available, and satellite images cannot help us very much, like for rivers or lakes, as you said. So we really need to cooperate on the field with the experts, with the countries, with the people living in the area where these aquifers exist. This is why UNESCO and the International Hydrological Program, under my supervision in the beginning of this century, considering that we were not at all aware of the importance of transboundary aquifers, the aquifers that are shared by countries, we started an inventory of these shared groundwater resources. And in 2015, we were able to prepare a map with identification of 592 transboundary aquifers. You understand what it means? I mean, that almost each country, of course, except the big islands like Australia or Japan, but almost all countries in the world share at least an aquifer with a neighboring country without knowing it. So you can imagine what's happening if there are contamination issues that are transboundary. What's happened if there is an over-pumping of an aquifer from one side to the other. And a transboundary aquifer needs cooperation because it's nothing else than a puzzle. And this puzzle is made in a way that the country, each one of the countries sharing the aquifer, has the little piece of this puzzle. So you have to go in the countries and ask them to put the pieces together. If not, you cannot have the information to understand how it works, how much water, which kind of quality, and regulate the aquifer together. So pumping, use, management, irrigation, water supply, and this has to be done in a concerted way between the countries. So these, of course, open other areas related to international law, related to cooperation. And one of the examples that is a successful, definitely one, was celebrated just last week in Geneva, is the Genevois Aquifer, shared by France and Switzerland. And they started really with a genuine spirit of pragmatic cooperation between municipalities and technicians of the two borders, the frontier, in the 70s, because this aquifer was crucial for water supply of the two areas, in France and in Switzerland. But the overpumping from the two sides, without telling each other, without talking each other, was creating a real depletion of the aquifer, a very substantial decrease of the amount of the water in these, let's say, box called aquifer. And then they came together and they said, well, our life depends, our economy depends on this aquifer partially. The Lake Léman also is linked with this aquifer. One of the rivers comes from France is also related to this aquifer. So we have definitely to do something. And they start a very successful cooperation. All pragmatic way, so studying the geology, studying all the science related, and they put together a sort of a real great technical, solution, injecting good water to replenish this aquifer. And this station of artificial recharge, if you wish, of the aquifer is still in action in this moment, and they can really control how much water they need, when they need it, and share it peacefully. So it's definitely an example that UNESCO use when we are teaching to decision makers and water scientists in other countries that things are possible with goodwill.
And there was an event to celebrate 40 years of the compact over the Genevois Aquifer. Is it a model that can be replicated elsewhere? Is life that simple, or are different geographies, do they pose different challenges?
The cooperation approach can be replicable everywhere, and we hope this will be the case. Now, of course, the geology of the Genevois Aquifer is not so complex. The aquifer is not so big, it's 30 square kilometers. When we have aquifers in Latin America or in Africa or in Arab states that are large like France or Germany, shared by 3 or 4 countries. So definitely the identification of the characteristic of these underground bodies containing these groundwater is more complex. But this is not a problem. Scientists can do it if the countries want to cooperate. So this is the crucial issue. We have to convince and we have to explain civil society that their decision makers have to be conscious of that when they share a water body like an aquifer, the solution on the long term for their sustainable development is cooperation.
You use the word sustainable development. To a non-scientist, it may seem that there's a problem with aquifers, and that is that if you drain them, there's no more water left. They're not sustainable.
Yeah, this is why we have to work on that, because there are several possibilities. Don't overpump the aquifers. Studying the nature of the aquifer, the capacity of the recharge of the aquifer, studying the full availability of the water resources in a particular area, you can decide to work with surface water when, for example, there is a lot of water in the rivers and not use the aquifer, and then in the arid period where the rivers is providing less water, to use the groundwater resources. The issue is to know exactly which kind of budget of water you have in a region, and for this you need, of course, good scientific evaluations and investigations. But it's not complex. We know how to do it. Our hydrogeologists know how to do it. But of course, this needs investment. So it's again and again a political issue, a political recognition that this system can definitely support sustainability of the water resource management, sustainability of economy, of irrigations, of food productions, of water supply, drinking water, but they have to invest on the governance, on the management, on the creation of law for the monitoring and for the correct use, adequate use, sustainable use of this body. As I say, the Genevois Aquifer was now recognized, very well studied, and replenished. They have a station that injects water from the river that is purified, of course, into the aquifer. So now the aquifer is completely full. They don't use it for the moment because they have enough water from the river and the lake. But in summertime, when these surface water are less available, they can use the aquifer. So this is the model that can be replicated everywhere in the world if there is the wish to do it.
And part of the role, I'm guessing, of your department is to raise awareness of this less visible resource. Do you find in your engagement with governments and communities that people are aware of the need for cooperation?
Unfortunately not. You are right. It's still something in which we have to work. Not on UNESCO with many partners. UNESCO has a very large network of partnership with many institutions, university, academia, NGOs, chairs, and UNESCO centers, and definitely several projects in Africa, Latin America, pilot projects, as I say. I mean, we have 592 transboundary aquifers. We are working presently only on 9 of these, the most crucial one, if you wish, in Africa, Latin America, and even in Europe. We are working on the karst aquifer that is shared by Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Albania, and Croatia. And why? Because it's a very large aquifer, and when this country took their independence, some, like Croatia, are entered now in the EU, the other not yet. There is now a need really to put the puzzle together and do some joint monitoring, because this aquifer is really providing, I would say, a large part of their economic resource, in particular in coastal zone, for the tourism. So definitely UNESCO is simply playing the role of the scientists there, helping the scientists in the countries to put together their information and the study, and be the guarantee that the right cooperation is going on. The same in other case studies and aquifers in other areas. But definitely most countries, considering that the groundwater is an invisible resource, and when you don't know something, you are afraid of something, they sometimes prefer don't go for cooperation, because they don't know. They don't know what they have. They don't know their system. And when you don't know, again, I repeat that, you are afraid of something, and then start cooperation with another country. It's an old, fear of sharing information that should be broken.
And you use this remarkable statistic that 97% of our non-frozen freshwater resources lives in aquifers. Again, as we think about the COP meeting in Poland this week, and pressures through climate change and human development on freshwater resources, the world's eyes are going to turn more to groundwater, surely. Definitely, because the precipitation characteristics, patterns are changing. In some areas there will be less precipitation, in some areas more precipitation, but these more precipitation sometimes are not the good ones. Will be some kind of precipitation that can create floods, can create dangers for even the soil and the agriculture, and not always peaceful rain that expect to us. So definitely there will be a tremendous impact on surface waters, and less impact on groundwater resources. We don't know yet how much, but groundwater can definitely be used as an adaptation measure for climate change, challenges. And in this moment, we know quite better related to the ocean and the atmosphere. There are more studies on that.
and unfortunately less studies on climate change impact on water resources. So this is a field of study that we have to promote and to invest on it. And when I say invest on it, means that countries have to invest in universities, in studies, in their ministries of water resources. Thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Alice Aureli.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for your attention.